Hello, welcome to another episode of Drawing with Clifford, where today we're going to be doing a freehand drawing of a dying flower using a crop-and-enlarge composition. So here's an image I've taken online, and the idea is I'm going to just focus on the most exciting part of the image, but make it bigger. So I'm going to just fold my bit of paper. So you can normally use a viewfinder, draw a box around it, but you know what, make life easier. I'm just going to fold a bit of paper. I'm going to fold it to isolate what I want to focus on. Now, this is not, you can already see it's a square. It's got to kind of match up my page. And technically, I'm going to be using is this area here. I'm going to enlarge it even further. So I'm going to pick an area that is most exciting. So I'm going to take this large petal here, and as you can see, I'm going to slow this down for a bit. I'm using very, very light, jagged lines that I'm refining every time I draw. So I've just slowed that down for a second to show you how I do it, and then I'm just going to continue to build those up. So I'm just going back and forth, refining my line every time I draw it, starting off really lightly. Once I've got that shape, I'm then going to draw the creases on bit by bit. So normally I'll draw the whole basic shape first, but this time I'm going to refine it before I move on to the next shape, because it's all about building it up like let's say like a Lego creation. I'm using a block at a time. I'm going to make sure this block looks about right before I move on. So just adding all these creases, changing the shape, refine it before I move on. And once I'm happy with it, I'm going to take another section of the image and just work my way outwards. So making sure it's in the same kind of proportion as the shape I've just drawn. So making sure they kind of, if I've made this one twice the size, the other shape has to be twice the size. And with the work, and as I said, I'm going to work my way outwards. Now the reason I've chosen a flower for this is because it's just like a flower. It grows in the middle and sprouts outwards. So I'm just building up these petals bit by bit, making sure I get my the folds on, the creases. I'm not adding any tone yet. I may be refining the shape as I go along, but I'm not adding any tone until obviously I've got the whole image. Just as I said before in previous videos, you make sure you get your basic shape first before you add any further detail. But there's nothing stopping me from adding creases and, you know, other marks and lines and textures just before I put any tone on. So as you can see, I'm now getting it all the way to page. And you might be thinking, hang on a minute, he's got all that space, and what I've done is, because I've made it so much bigger, I'm cropping it even further. So I'm only drawing it to until it fills up the whole page. Because the idea with this image is I'm trying to really concentrate on the detail of the image. So I'm now putting a stalk on. Now here's a big thing I've noticed with students is when you come to drawing, let's say a stalk of a flower or you know, maybe it's always too thick. So what I try to do is start with a line and slowly make it wider. So you know, just make sure you don't make it too thick. Let's say because that's kind of like the thing we like about flowers. It's a big heavy object on a very small thin base, and it kind of powers top. So I'm still working my way around. I'm identifying certain bits, building up petals. As I finish one part, I continue moving. So I'm still using these loose lines, I'm still refining them, just very lightly building it up. So I'm just drawing more lines on there to show you kind of like where my page kind of gets to, so I've cropped off even more. Yeah, that works. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, before I move on to tone, remember, sharpen your pencil. You're going to have to do this a couple of times, obviously, do this right. And today, I've actually got, once again, I've got myself a cotton bud for a smudge stick, got my rubber, and I'm just going to use that for any blending. So this is just, I've slowed it down again, just showing an example of how I build up my dark tone. So I'm just using little lines on top of each other. That's all about creating those layers. I'm using some longer lines as well, obviously. So I don't want to use too many little scribbles. Where it's really dark, I build them up over and over again, and where it gets lighter, I space them out. I'll speed this back up again. So as I've added my tone, I'm going to refine my shape. So using directional lines to identify, creases and the circular shape of the bottom part of this petal, and just kind of like shading on those small bits of dark tone. A bit of refinement over in the corner. A little bit of shading where the light can't get to. Now I'm going to use my cotton bud for smudging. Now, I've said this before in previous videos, don't use your finger if you can. Either roll up a bit of paper, buy yourself one of these fancy smudge sticks, even though I recommend, the reason I'm making these videos is show you kind of like really fantastic pieces of artwork you can make with just things you can find around the house. As I say, I've got some fancy smudge sticks in my cupboard, but I like using a cotton bud. I'm used to it. I use it in classroom, so I use it in the classroom, so I'll use it at home as well. Yeah, it does the job, but just don't use your fingers. Your hands are full of oils and it makes it hard to draw back over, which is what I'm doing now. Once I've smudged it, I need to remember to re-record my dark tones just to kind of give it that extra depth of tone. Just building those up. So what I do like to add to these, just what I'm doing here, I'm just eradicating any overly dark lines. As I say, the idea around the tone is to make sure all these lines kind of disappear. We just want to see the texture and the tone, none of the basic shape anymore, because that's what makes it look too cartoony. Now with all these videos, I try making it clear, but I only do this once. Any mistakes I make on this first drawing, I'm going to keep on there. I'm not going to re-record this. The only thing that comes to the edit is my voiceover, and that's why it sounds like I'm about 2 or 3 seconds behind what I'm actually doing. It's just me trying to remember what I've done. So I'm just adding the tone here. Just going to add that little bit on there, a bit of dark tone. And I won't lie, guys, it's just rinse and repeat. If this part of the drawing is very repetitive, but it's also very rewarding. You slowly see your image come to life. Every line, every scribble you put on, every bit of blending, it just brings it all together. But as I said, this is not a second take. This is every piece of work I've done on this page has always been the first attempt, just so it's kind of like recreating what it'd be like in a classroom when I'm doing a demonstration. And so some of you might want to try this drawing about 3 or 4 times. You're more than welcome to, but when I set this as work to my classes, I say, look, give it one go, refine, work with what you've got. We're not going to use all the paper up or use our pencil the way it becomes a little nub. We're just going to keep working on our first attempt. So there will be mistakes. It won't be absolutely perfect, but it's an honest drawing, and that's what I kind of want for these. They're honest drawings in a short amount of time. And I say, if I was to do this properly, I'd do it on a larger scale. I'd probably use my fancy tonal pencils, where it goes from all the way from 10B to 10H. But at the moment, we're just using a HB pencil and working with what we've got, and that's what this is all about. Being able to create work with whatever we can find around the house or whatever we've got in our pencil case. So what you can probably notice from this is my starting to see quite a nice bit of tone on this petal. I need to kind of differentiate it from this bottom bit, so this petal, this part of the main body is going to be a lot darker, so it makes the top bit look a bit lighter. You can see where I've smudged before, and I've blended that back in, and what I tend to do after I've smudged, I put my dark tone back on. And that's the great thing about using the cotton bud, as if you use your finger to smudge, it's harder to draw back on because the oils go on the page, and it doesn't, and the graphite in the pencil doesn't seem to attach on. I'm just building up these extra bits of detail. This dark line up here is just to separate that part there, because it's going to be a lot darker underneath, that top part's lighter. And I'm now starting to use longer marks just to identify the texture of that shape. And that's kind of the great thing about petals, and that's why I love doing natural forms, because it's not just about the tone of a 3D shape, it's about all this texture, all these creases. And even if you get it slightly wrong with proportions. It's no flower's the same. You're not trying to make it a carbon copy, and it's still identifiable as, you know, kind of like a dying flower as such. So just going to keep adding to this. You can see with that nice bit of tone on there, it just needs a bit of texture, and that's what I mean. You can't just have tone without texture. They go hand in hand. It's just what brings it all together. One thing I like to remind my students in the lesson is also always look back at your original source. If it's primary or secondary. Today we're doing secondary because it's an image I found online of a dead flower. You always need to look back at it. It's, you know, our memories are fantastic, but your eyes never lie. So I'm just gently put a bit of smudge back on there. It's starting really sustained. I'm liking this. And the idea around this is I'm not putting myself under pressure. I'm not trying to make this absolutely perfect. I'm just trying to enjoy this drawing, and that's what is something we don't tend to do anymore, is just enjoy drawing. So I'm not worried about if anything goes wrong. That's, once again, the great thing about drawing flowers, it's just about creating something that I can like. So sharpen the pencil again, make sure it's nice and it's dark tone. And honestly, that really helps. If you want to have to repair a dark tone, make sure your pencil's nice and sharp. It makes that extra bit more brittle. I might in a future video actually go back into this drawing and see if I can use a colour media to see if we can change, you know, adapt this drawing to create something a bit more different and more contemporary. I might have some pastels hanging around. I'll check in the cupboard, but I'm really enjoying this, and that's so hopefully when you're drawing this at home, you'll be you know, not putting yourself under any pressure, just drawing it as you see it. And one last thing I like to add about these, because I feel like because I've shown you this technique multiple times, and as I said, it's not really much explaining needs to happen. Just take your time and keep it up. But talking about time is that with these videos, I try to do these under half an hour, so it can kind of replicate what it's like to be in a lesson. Because a real good sustained drawing takes longer than a lesson, and it's one thing we don't really identify in education, but we expect you to create something fantastic each lesson, but a real strong piece of art takes days, could take weeks. It's sometimes nice to go back on a drawing and change it, and, you know, leave it on the work desk and come back to it every so often. So, but these kind of drawings is meant to identify what it's like drawing in a classroom, you know, where we have those expectations of creating something that lesson. It can be done, and this is an example of how. And as I say, I'm just going to add some light tone underneath here, a bit of texture. One thing I haven't mentioned in any of these videos, and I'm talking more about the videos than the actual drawing today, is when you're doing a sustained drawing, make sure you're sitting somewhere comfortable. Now, you may not realise this, but I've got a big chunky camera in front of me on a tripod, and I'm sitting on a kitchen chair, or kneeling, so I can see what I'm drawing. And I'm not comfortable doing this, but it kind of shows in my drawing that I'm trying to rush it because I'm not, you know, in a comfy chair. But so when you're drawing at home, make sure you sit somewhere comfy. I sometimes recommend getting a tray and sitting on the sofa, just so you don't feel like the need to move, or because the comfier you feel, the more time you're going to spend on this image. You're not going to want to get up and fidget around, and you know, you can always, and your whole focus will be on the drawing. I know people in studio spaces who I've worked with before who might be watching this video, who may remember at university I had a big comfy chair that I used to do my work in. Or if you're in my classroom, if you've ever been in my classroom, you know I've got a big recliner chair for when I do demonstration, because it does affect your drawing. The better you feel when you're drawing it, the better your drawing's going to be. So what I'm doing here, I'm just doing a little bit more refinement, adding that dark tone. And also, every time you look back at your drawing, if you feel, you know, you don't have to work on one section at a time. If you notice something on a previous section that you want to fix it as soon as you see it. It never hurts to go back and refine, and you know, it's best to do it as soon as you notice it, because you might forget, and then there'll be something in that drawing that bugs you. So I'm going back to this area here because it's just doesn't look right. So I'm just going to darken this tone here, make sure I've got a bit of variation, so it's one of the grey. I'm going to neaten the shape up here before I go back to the top petal. So I'm coming near the end. This, now, funny enough, the larger the shape, the easier it is to draw, because you know, I can see all the detail. I can use longer lines, a bit of blending. So I can actually rely a lot more on the cotton bud for this part. And then, as I always say, once you've blended, refine it with some more dark tone and draw over the top. Then we are coming to the end. This is starting to look really cool. I've enjoyed this drawing. I wouldn't say it's completely sustained, but for the time period we're given and the materials we're using, I think it's worked really well. So I shouldn't really be using a single direction here, but what I'm trying to do here, I'm just trying to put the dark tone on first, smudge it to place, and then I'm going to put the texture on after. But I'm going to use a longer, I'm going to extend my pencil, add a little section on here, and I think that's almost done. Just a few little refinement lines. Don't be worried to rub out anything, let's say make a mistake, just leave it, but dark tone down here enough. Should I call it? I'm gonna say, I have to get these dark tones, I can't stop. I want to call it done, it's looking pretty good. And yeah, I'm done. So I've achieved what I wanted to do. It's a crop and enlarge composition. Most of the detail is centered around that middle petal, which I thought was the most interesting part, and I've had to rely on no gridding up or any other techniques. I've just drawn freehand, and that's what this whole project was about. And I've enjoyed myself, and I hope you enjoy having a go at this too. So good luck, and I'll see you later.